Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the News. The last couple of weeks, we've kind of started in the Middle East and taken trips west and then landed back in Israel. So this week, we're going to try something a little bit different. Start here in the US and then make our way east. You're always welcome to leave your feedback, it is greatly appreciated. Maybe we'll change it up every week. We'll see. So let's dive in. So, more news out of Minneapolis this week. I'm going to preface this by saying the fact that I don't know the full details of the situation. I don't necessarily believe that full details have been released as of yet. However, in general, there's clearly a lot of chaos happening there, and chaos generally leads to more chaos. And we've seen situations where ICE officers have behaved in reprehensible ways. And we've also seen situations where protesters have behaved in reprehensible ways. And neither is okay. Neither invalidates the fact that the chaos needs to stop. Peaceful protests don't often end in chaos. And people who have nothing to hide and intend peace don't show up with masks, face coverings, and all sorts of gear to hide who they are. Regardless, violence should be a last resort and not the initial plan of action. In Columbia Heights, Minnesota, let's discuss the facts first. ICE agents were at a home. A 5-year-old arrived to this home with his father. When the boy's father saw the ICE agents, he fled on foot and was quickly caught. The 5-year-old boy and his father were then detained and sent to a detention center in Texas. The Columbia Heights Public School District Superintendent alleges that the father has an active asylum case with no deportation orders. The Department of Homeland Security alleges that the father is here illegally. This is the wonder bread of it all. Nothing more and nothing less. Where does it get sticky? The morality of it all. Why was a 5-year-old detained? How can a 5-year-old be detained? What was the treatment of this 5-year-old? Why was another guardian not contacted to care for the boy? Now, some more questions that people might have. Why did the father run away when he saw the officers? How can you abandon your child? If he did feel endangered or threatened by these officers, what would possess him to leave his child with them? All of the questions are valid. More valid questions. Is the boy okay? Will he be taken care of? Who's going to be taking care of him? Might this experience cause some trauma or PTSD? What is being done to make sure that this boy is not only physically safe, but also nurtured as a child so young should be? Again, all valid questions, but none of this is helped by the fact that in the last week, several other children under the age of 18 were detained with their parents as well. There was also an ICE shooting in Los Angeles. A man who has been suspected of human smuggling and also had 2 prior arrests for corporal injury on a spouse or cohabitant. An immigration judge also issued a final order of removal for this person in 2019. This was 7 years ago. So this is everything that's going on, straightforward, no fluff. Are there more details likely to emerge? I imagine so. Does this mean that ICE's tactics are horrific? Not necessarily. Does it mean that ICE doesn't need some humanity and relational skills training? Not necessarily. Do we need more information to understand the full picture? Yes. Does this mean that we can't have empathy for the fact that a child has gone through something that no child ever should experience? Not at all. But nothing is black and white, and we cause more problems for ourselves when we try to contain complex things into divisive options. This past Thursday, a new bill was introduced into legislation. What is this bill? It's a bill that restricts certain federal assistance benefits to people who are verified citizens of the United States. There was another similar introduced bill in December called No Welfare for Non-Citizens Act. This bill would do two things: end eligibility for federal welfare benefits for all non citizens, and also eliminate carve outs that currently allow limited access to certain federal programs. So, what does all of this mean in everyday language? As of October 1st, 2026, Medicaid eligibility will be given to green card holders, Cuban Haitian entrants, and COFA, Compact of Free Association citizens. People who have asylum, who are refugees, may be on parole, and who are trafficking survivors will no longer have access. As far as SNAP eligibility, which is food assistance, undocumented immigrants may not receive this. However, if you have a child or children who are US citizens, you may apply, and the benefits are based on eligible household members. As far as Social Security, undocumented immigrants will not receive those benefits, even though they may be contributing to the fund. Now, these issues are typically very right and left because the right generally feels like, well, you don't have the right to something just because you exist. And the left generally feels like every human has the right to basic physiological needs. In other news, Macy's, one of the country's leading department stores, is closing 14 locations, probably because everyone is getting everything super cheap from China. It's quite sad seeing how this like online technology internet shift is having an impact on people's lives. We all talked about it for so long and it's happening slowly. In New York, Zoran Mamdani is encouraging people to apply for the city's free childcare. Is childcare an incredible thing? Of course. Is it helpful for parents who have to work long hours? 100%. But is it free? No. And that's my problem with this. Sure, technically, you're not paying a daily or a weekly or a monthly fee for someone to take care of your kids, but is it free? No, because your taxes are affected by this. You have to pay taxes, and therefore, it's not free. And programs like this always sound amazing in the beginning. And then people get upset because there are too many children for the amount of caretakers provided. The caretakers get burnt out and stop being as effective. The program becomes overwhelmed, and people are waiting God knows how long to actually receive the benefits. Do we ever learn? I'm not saying that communities shouldn't band together. I'm a firm believer that it takes a village. But do you really want the government to be your village? Okay, so in 2021, Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Embedded in this act, a law that forced the Department of Transportation to create a mandate for kill switches in cars. There are many attempts to block the enforcement of this mandate, and it's not technically a legal requirement yet. Many people believe that this is gross government overreach, and many others believe that it could be life-saving. But I would like to pose a few questions. Why mandate something if you don't intend to enforce it? What does the government qualify as life-saving in order to justify remotely turning off your car? Can the definition of life-saving change? What if they decide that non-life-saving measures are valid reasons to remotely turn off your car? Just a little food for thought. A labor and delivery nurse apparently made a video of herself saying she hopes that during childbirth, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has a fourth-degree tear and rips from bow to stern. It never ceases to amaze me how little compassion people that work in healthcare can have. Like, who hired you? Was their EQ at a functional, humane level? To be hired in all of these like big tech companies, you have to do IQ tests, EQ tests, other aptitude tests, and jump through like 500 hoops of fire. And people like this woman are working in hospitals and doctors' offices with actual human beings. The healthcare system needs to hire the tech recruiters because competency skills are lacking if this is who's allowed to be hired. Apparently, Daddy Trump isn't doing too hot in the polls right now. It's speculated that he doesn't care because it's not like he needs you to vote for him again. He's allegedly promised some stimulus checks at some point this year due to all of the money that we're making from tariffs. Maybe this is going to sway people's opinion of him. People will do anything for a dollar. On top of the fact that he's got his eye on Cuba, he also made some bogus claims that America created the Iron Dome. Sometimes the right response to Trump is just to shake your head. Now for a Euro trip. In London, a PR firm, Portland Communications, has been accused of making edits to Qatar's Wikipedia page. In 2022, Qatar was chosen to be the host of the World Cup, and therefore they needed some beautifying because of their flagrant human rights violations, including aiding in human trafficking. Another removal was information that was related to Qatari billionaires who were sued by the British High Court for channeling funds to a Syrian terrorist group. In addition, many migrants who were actually working to build the stadium for the World Cup are believed to have died due to the substandard, dangerous working conditions. This PR firm has a history of manipulating truth, specifically changing narratives regarding political fallout in Libya, and also removing information for Stella Artois, referring to the fact that the beer has been known to lead to aggressive behavior. I mean, people have been lying in marketing for literally ever. Does it make it right? Of course not. But if we had a problem with marketing campaigns bending the truth, we probably should have held them responsible long before now. We can't get mad that people are getting away with what we allowed them to get away with. Also in London, a shell company that has been up and running for a decade was discovered to be run by the Houthis, a terrorist group from Yemen. And apparently, it's not the only one. Why is this an obvious problem? Because it's a backdoor avenue for Iranian backed terrorist groups to enter other countries and avoid sanctions. What's the more important, maybe less obvious problem? Radical Islamist content is promoted under the guise of media, journalism, entertainment. And even more importantly, terrorists can enter a country legally as employees of a legitimate company. And of course, the British government is wondering how they can tackle the issue without infringing on people's rights and freedoms, because obviously appeasing terrorists has worked in everyone's favor in all the history of ever. And we wonder why the UAE isn't paying to send its citizens there. In Spain, two high speed trains derailed that left around 40 people dead. A few days later, another train derailed, the captain died, and there were injuries amongst the passengers. And this same day, another train had an axle come off its tracks. I don't know what's going on over there with these trains, but hopefully this is it for them. And we're wishing the families who lost loved ones peace and speedy recovery for the injured. In Germany, police officers arrested a Lebanese citizen flying in from Beirut who has been linked with arming Hamas with terror supplies and planning attacks against Jews and Israelis. I'm not sure if Germany genuinely wants to fight terrorists or if they just have a deep case of Holocaust guilt. Either way, they're doing a better job than the UK. Okay, so what's going on in Syria? Now, I'm not an expert and I don't claim to know all the ins and outs, but what I do know is that this president isn't as clean cut as he looks, and Syria is not having this peaceful revolution. We just love to call things peaceful, don't we? If everything is peaceful, then nothing is peaceful. So, who is Ahmed al-Shara'a, and why should you care about his history? Because in the early 2000s, the guy illegally entered Iraq so he could join Al Qaeda. What is Al Qaeda, do you ask? an Islamist militant group led by jihadis who want to create a worldwide Islamic caliphate. But he looks so cute in his tailor fit suit, doesn't he? While in Al Qaeda, he was arrested by American forces. A few years down the line, he was being held by Iraqi forces. He somehow bamboozled them into believing that he was also Iraqi and they let him go. And naturally, he went back to Al Qaeda. He was given the responsibility of creating an Al Qaeda group in Syria. He is a leader who executed suicide bombings, forced conversions, and also the massacres of Christian, Alawite, Shia, and Druze minorities. So he got a brand stylist, and we fast forward to 5 minutes ago when he was declared president of Syria. And his quote unquote military, in other words, Islamist militant jihadis, have been massacring Christians, Alawites, Shia, Druze, and Kurdish minorities. And many people have valid questions like, is Trump not aware of this guy's history? Has Trump fallen for the glow up? Is Trump taking the side of a terrorist? Is Bibi falling for the glow up? Does Bibi not trust Trump because of this Syria situation? All great questions. And it definitely does look like Trump is siding with terrorists. There's no doubt about that. However, Trump does tend to have a decent grip on people and their role in an end goal. Trump and Bibi have a more in sync relationship than what most people understand. A lot of questions surrounding Syria are still up in the air. Like, what's the point of all this? What's the end goal? Why was this Al Qaeda terrorist allowed to walk into the United States, into the White House, all while calling for the massacre of innocent people? This is a big one that we will need to keep our eye on. As of today, when we're shooting, Iran has been without internet for over 350 hours. It's absolutely insane. Nothing has been confirmed. However, it is believed that upwards of 30,000 people have been mercilessly slaughtered in Iran. And it's likely that that number is actually higher and the slaughtering has not stopped at all. Greta, Angelina, Dua, Macklemore, Bueller. I guess they never really cared as much about humans as they did optics. Iran's noble and courageous leader Khamenei is said to have been moved to a fortified bunker in Tehran. Oh, to be a leader that kills everyone and then hides to avoid the consequences. Trump has not let go of an attack. However, he does like to win. And he's making sure that if he starts something, he will finish it. Now, you could say that this is narcissistic, and okay, people love to call him a narcissist, and it's not to say that he may not have some tendencies. However, wanting to win a fight that you start is just good business, and it's setting yourself up for success. No one is calling Khamenei a narcissist, and I'd say that killing people because they don't like you and then sloppily trying to cover it up and then hiding under a rock is not only narcissistic, but it's sociopathic as well. Anyhow, because Trump sets himself up to win, the American military in the Middle East is becoming quite substantial. At the end of this past week, there were 8 armed naval assets, aircraft carriers, escort destroyers, squadrons of fighter jets, multiple additional Navy ships, squadrons on the ground ready to go, multiple Coast Guard ships, and that's not even the complete list. And Trump doesn't just care to win, he cares to win by a blowout. And for all of the trauma that the people of Iran have suffered for such a long time, it seems like a blowout would be well deserved. I just hope for the safety of the civilians and the precision of the armed forces. Now, what's going on in Israel? So first of all, we got cut off short last week, so I want to finish up a couple of stories that we missed. A group of 3 men were sentenced to prison for looting the site of the Nova Music Festival literally one day after October 7th. Can you imagine thinking to yourself, hmm, all of these people just died, were slaughtered. There must be a lot of great stuff to steal. You are sick. They were also ordered to pay fines. They stole laptops, credit cards, IDs, cash, electronics, alcohol, tools, anything they could get their grubby little hands on. And they were not the only ones to behave in such a way. This is absolutely disgusting behavior. The soldiers are suffering more loudly than ever now from PTSD. Why do I say more loudly now than ever? War has an effect on your mind, your emotions, and your body. Just because we now have better language for it doesn't mean it didn't exist before. Trauma is deeply embedded throughout life because of the frequent and consistent terror that is coming from within and rained on Israel. And it deepens with age. And I imagine the military isn't a space where you sit and talk about your feelings. So much of this is repressed, and bottled emotions always come up somehow. Our soldiers are fighting every day for our sake and for the sake of our future, and we have to do a better job of caring for them. It's the least we can do. I know that the FIDF, among many other organizations, are offering services for any soldiers struggling with PTSD or any other mental health challenges. Look out for your friends, and if you notice something, gently speak to them about it. Along the same lines, the Knesset approved a preliminary reading of a bill that would allow victims of hostile acts to be eligible for unlimited mental health care. It does need to be passed through a few more readings before becoming a law. However, it is a huge step in the right direction for anyone who has experienced trauma from hostile acts and anyone who may experience this trauma in the future. Big story out of Jerusalem. An illegal daycare was basically found out because they had an incident where two babies, practically newborns, died. One was 3 months and the other 6 months. And over 50 other early aged children were injured. So, what was going on in this place exactly? Babies on mattresses under toilets, swaddled in blankets all over the floor of the bathroom, children in closets, babies in strollers, strollers everywhere, babies all over the kitchen, babies on beds. It was like Tetris for babies. And the apartment was 4 bedrooms. And we're not talking penthouse 4 bedrooms, we're talking Northeast US 4 bedrooms. The children were provided medical care, social services assisted the families, and the owner and caregiver were arrested. So, prayer restrictions are being loosened on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. What's the Temple Mount? The Temple Mount is the site where the first temple, erected somewhere around 960 BCE, and the second temple, erected somewhere around 520 BCE. What happened was that after the second temple was destroyed, like way after, the Al Aqsa Mosque was built where the temples had been. So we fast forward and Israel became Israel. However, the Temple Mount was a touchy subject. Only Muslims have been allowed to openly pray on the Temple Mount, the site of the first and second temple. Now, there's some strangeness because the Muslims technically run the day to day operations, but Israel has sovereignty and is in charge of security. But as we said, the rules are loosening, and water doesn't cut through stone overnight. A man set 3 police officers on fire at a gas station close to Haifa. The officers were called to the area because there was a concern over a man exhibiting erratic, suicidal behavior. And when they arrived, the man poured a flammable liquid on one of the officers, and the other two were burned trying to contain the man and also trying to help the officer. The man is currently detained, and the officers are healing. There was a counterterrorism operation carried out in Hebron as a part of continuous operational efforts to enforce law and order and to ensure security and the safety of citizens. The operations involve fighters from different battalions, special units, border police, and local police. Buildings are searched and wanted suspects are arrested. So BB met with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to discuss the issues of Gaza and Iran. They also discussed recovering the body of the last hostage being held, Ron Gvili. Statements have been made alleging that the whereabouts of the body are actually known. So we'll hopefully be given more details about that in the coming days. You may have also heard about this Board of Peace, which will be overseeing the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Trump is the overseer of the board for life, and he has complete veto power, and he also gets to decide who is going to take his place. The US administration also has a 100-day targeted timeline for Hamas to disarm. So this will be an interesting process watching how, Hamas is disarmed and this Board of Peace rolls its way in. A commander and sergeant from a commando brigade team were dismissed from their positions due to a friendly fire accident. They were executing an operation to arrest terrorist suspects, and they mistakenly identified another IDF commando team as the enemy and they opened fire. Now, there were navigational errors at play here. Fortunately, no one was injured in the incident. In 2025, a total of 25 Israeli citizens were indicted for spying on behalf of Iran. And it wasn't just Arab citizens, it was also Jews who were taking part in the spying for money. Unrelated to this specifically, 130 Arab Israelis were indicted for terrorism offenses. 219 were arrested, and a large group of them swore allegiance to ISIS. Over 2,500 Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria were arrested for potential involvement in terrorist activities. It's quite an experience to live in a place where people are constantly trying to plot terror against you. It's a part of life in Israel, and it's also what makes a tenacious and strong people. So we'll end on a high note. The Israeli bobsledding team qualified for the Winter Olympics for the first time ever. Mazal tov. It'll be great to watch them race for Israel. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.